top story this afternoon. The French government has blasted back at Reform UK's plan to use the Navy to return immigrants back to France. A spokesperson for the French Interior Ministry slammed Reform's flagship plan, Operation Fortress, as a violation of French sovereignty, as well as a violation of maritime and international law. The French aren't happy. Not for the first time. Now let's speak with the chairman of Reform UK, and that is, of course, Lee Anderson, who joins us live from Calais. Lee, you're out there.
Well, there you go. This is GB News Originals. I'm Emily Carver. Please do give this video a like and subscribe to our channel for more content like this. And do leave a comment. Let me know what you think. Do you think...
Observing the migrant camps, the chaos, the carnage of Calais. Tell us what you've seen.
Well, there is chaos, Martin, in Calais, and from my last visit 3.5 years ago, I think things have got considerably worse. The camp we visited today, just outside Calais, was full to the rafters. There was people from different nationalities, and the conditions were squalid. There was children there was women, lots of men actually, Martin. When we tried to question them and talk to them, they would cover their faces up. They would hide their faces. It makes you wonder what they're trying to hide, if they're genuine refugees fleeing war-torn countries. I suspect that the vast majority are not. I suspect that a lot of them have got something to hide. But you have to feel for the children on a human level as well. But that said, any parent putting their child into one of these dinghies like we've seen today off northern France, any parent doing that and putting their child's life at risk to get to England when they could claim asylum in France, don't forget, I think they should be charged with child cruelty. It's not the thing to do to put your child at harm's risk like that. It's absolutely shocking. But what we also seen today, this morning, Martin, was the French police. They turned up at about 4:30 this morning, armed to the teeth, but looking very aggressive. They challenged us on our way to the beach. And I thought to myself at the time, if they could put as much effort into stopping the small boat crossings as they did to stopping us getting on the beach this morning, maybe we could bring the numbers down even further.
Now, Lee Anderson, it's also worth pointing out that, of course, the small boats crisis, it sunk Rishi Sunak. The Star Marder was the end, part of the big story of the downfall of Sir Keir Starmer. In terms of the size of the operation you're seeing on the beaches of Calais there, in terms of the intel you're hearing, is Andy's Armada the next thing? Is there any end in sight to this, or will it continue forever?
It's Burnham's boats. That's what it is, Martin. And the migrants we spoke to in the camp today, they don't care how long it takes them to cross the channel or how many attempts it takes them. We spoke to one chap today. He's failed 6 times to get across the channel, been caught 6 times. But he says he's stopping in that camp in Calais until he gets there. So, yes, they may stop boats, but they're not stopping the people. And this is the important thing, Martin. The people, whatever there's a pull factor, whatever we refuse to detain and deport or put the military in the sea, they will keep coming. It's as simple as that. And anybody who says otherwise, quite frankly, they need to go and get some help.
Well, Lee Anderson, the French don't like your plan. They think it stinks. They say Operation Fortress is a violation of French sovereignty.
Yeah, I tell you what, Martin, they might not like our plan, but they like the close on to £1 billion that the British taxpayer has sent them. And if they are serious about stopping the migrant crisis, if they are serious about emptying the camps in northern France, then we have to have a deterrent in the UK. And if we can stop the people coming across the channel, then the people will stop coming to northern France and filling these camps up, and that would make every French person's life a little bit easier.
Lee Anderson, we're seeing a near disaster in the Channel today. 157 illegal immigrants forced to jump overboard when a mega dinghy burst into flames. Are you not concerned that Operation Fortress could endanger more life at sea by trying to turn craft around?
Absolute nonsense, Martin. I mean, what happened in Australia? They had, I think it was 1,187 deaths at the time. They had a small boat crisis, or large boat crisis, should we say. As soon as they stopped the boats, the deaths stopped. So this will save lives, Martin. And it proved today in the Channel, all this nonsense that you hear from the left-wing commentators and left-wing politicians that we can't return people back to France, today proved that we can.
I'll tell you what, Lee Anderson, I've had another idea. If they put you in that flat cap on the beach and on Dover, your ugly mush should frighten a few boats back.
Well, I'll tell you what, mate, I've got an even better proposition. If they could put you and Nigel Nelson on a TV screen and show the migrants that's what they're up against when they get to the UK, I think they go to Germany.
Lee Anderson, it's always a pleasure to have your company on the show. Thank you very much indeed for joining us there from the beaches of Calais. The flat cap is coming off. Doff of the cap there. Thank you very much, Lee Anderson, the Red Wall Rottweiler. Back to Westminster. I'm joined by GB News' political correspondent Olivia Oatley. Olivia, we make light of a very, very serious situation. We almost had a disaster at sea earlier on. 157 forced to jump overboard when a mega dinghy caught fire. However you cut this, it is a disaster waiting to happen. The craft are getting bigger. The desperation is getting higher. There is no end in sight to this. Something needs to be done. The big question is Operation Fortress the right plan, or is it pie in the sky?
Well, Operation Fortress is fraught with legal, diplomatic and logistic complications. I mean, logistically, the Royal Navy is in no fit state to do what reform is asking of it. Reform's rebuttal to that is that you would be able to invest a lot more in the Navy if you're not having so many small boat migrants taking up space and spending taxpayer money in the UK. But the hard truth of the matter is that over the last 10 or 15 years, the Royal Navy has been hollowed out. We weren't capable of sending one ship to Cyprus at the beginning of the Iranian war. Would the Navy really be capable? Would it have the capacity of turning back every single small boat? Then, of course, there are legal issues. Part of that is the European Court of Human Rights, which, of course, Reform has said that it would withdraw from. But actually, quite a lot of the human rights legislation which stops migrants being sent back to France is enshrined in British human rights law. So they'd have to repeal the Human Rights Act, which would be very, very difficult, possible with a very large majority, but very difficult, and would have lots and lots of problems in the Lords as well, particularly as the Lords is packed with peers who are of a generally liberal mindset, whether they sit as Labour or Conservatives. Then you've got, which I think is the biggest issue, the diplomatic issue. As you say, France has said that they are not keen at all on this idea. Nigel Farage and Zia Youssef, perhaps slightly naively, seem to think that the French will be on board with it because it will improve the lives of so many people in northern France. Nigel Farage, when I asked him this yesterday, said, you know, in places like Dunkirk, people are scared of going out of their houses because of the influx of migrants on the beaches. And if you stopped the flow over the channel, then it would stop those migrants coming to France. So the French government should be on board. Would they really be on board with it? It all depends on who the French government is.
Well, that's
The drama in northern France and the high-stakes policy war threatening British border control. Take a deep breath and take a moment to look beyond the daily political soundbites, because the reality unfolding along the coastline of northern France and across the choppy waters of the English Channel is rapidly escalating into one of the most intense legal, diplomatic and political showdowns the United Kingdom has witnessed in recent memory. Welcome back to Britain Underneath, the place where we strip away the sanitised parliamentary speeches to look directly at the raw mechanics, hidden pressures and unvarnished truths shaping British society today. Before we jump into the absolute heart of this unfolding situation, please hit that subscribe button right now to support our independent coverage. It genuinely helps the channel grow, allows us to bring you these deep dives consistently, and keeps you informed on the real stories driving our nation. Now, let us dive straight into the growing friction between London, Paris, and the political establishment over the future of Britain's borders. The atmosphere in northern France, particularly in the makeshift encampments scattered around Calais, has reached a critical juncture. Observers and political figures visiting the region describe conditions that are as precarious as they are troubling. Overcrowded sites, squalid living environments, and an overwhelming sense of desperation characterize these encampments, where individuals from dozens of different nations gather with a singular focus. Reaching the British coast. While the human aspect of these encampments evokes undeniable empathy, particularly when women and children are caught in the crossfire of international human smuggling networks, the broader geopolitical situation presents an extraordinary challenge for policymakers in Westminster. There is a growing frustration among British observers who point out that many of the young men residing in these camps actively avoid cameras, cover their faces, and refuse to engage with visiting officials, raising difficult questions about verification, safety, and the motives driving the continuous flow of unauthorized crossings across one of the busiest shipping lanes in the world. At the very center of this storm is a radical new proposal that has set off alarm bells across Whitehall, the Elysee Palace, and international legal circles. Dubbed Operation Fortress, the plan put forward by Reform UK advocates for deploying the Royal Navy directly into the English Channel to intercept every single unauthorized vessel and escort or return its occupants directly back to the French shoreline. Proponents of this hardline approach argue that without a decisive physical deterrent at sea, the UK will remain locked in an endless cycle of costly border management and administrative delays. They point to international precedents, such as strict maritime border enforcement policies used elsewhere in the world, asserting that turning vessels back safely would ultimately dismantle the business model of human traffickers and prevent tragic loss of life at sea. However, the response from Paris has been swift, uncompromising, and deeply critical. The French Interior Ministry immediately slammed the proposal, declaring that any unilateral attempt by British naval forces to enter French territorial waters or discharge individuals onto French beaches would constitute a direct violation of French national sovereignty, as well as a breach of international maritime conventions. French officials maintain that their law enforcement personnel are already working under immense strain along hundreds of miles of coastline to prevent launch attempts at 4 a.m, often facing hostile conditions on the sand dunes. From the perspective of Paris, Britain cannot simply export its border control operations onto foreign soil without mutual consent, setting up a potentially explosive diplomatic standoff between two historic neighbours. Before we explore the enormous legal and military hurdles facing this strategy, take a moment to hit that subscribe button if you have not already. Subscribing to Britain Underneath ensures you never miss a deep breakdown of the political currents moving behind the scenes, and your support genuinely keeps this channel alive and independent. To understand why this issue is causing such intense friction inside the British establishment, one must examine the formidable legal and logistical realities that any government in Westminster would face when attempting such a policy. Legal experts and constitutional analysts point out that executing a forced maritime return policy is far more complicated than simply issuing an order to naval commanders. First, there is the massive framework of domestic and international law. Even if a government were to withdraw from European human rights frameworks, key provisions regarding maritime safety, duty of care at sea, and processing protocols are embedded deep within domestic British legislation. Repealing or altering these legal statutes would require navigating a fierce parliamentary battle, particularly in the House of Lords, where peers across the political spectrum are likely to resist sweeping changes to established human rights protections. Logistically, military analysts have voiced serious doubts about whether the Royal Navy currently possesses the specific operational capacity to execute a continuous, large-scale interception campaign in the Channel without abandoning its primary defence commitments around the globe. Over the past decade, naval resources have been stretched thin across multiple international missions, from monitoring foreign naval movements in northern waters to maintaining commitments in the Mediterranean and the Indo-Pacific. Operating small vessel interceptions requires highly specialised vessels, trained boarding parties skilled in non-lethal management, and comprehensive medical support. Deploying military assets designed for national defence to manage crowded dinghies in volatile sea conditions carries immense operational risks, particularly when overcrowded vessels face immediate danger of capsizing or catching fire during high seas encounters. Moreover, the diplomatic dimension remains perhaps the most significant roadblock of all. International maritime law relies heavily on bilateral cooperation between neighbouring states. Britain has already committed hundreds of millions of pounds under bilateral agreements with France to fund increased police patrols, surveillance technology, and intelligence-sharing operations along the French coast. While critics argue that these financial agreements have failed to deliver a complete halt to departures, defenders of the current strategy maintain that removing diplomatic cooperation altogether would leave the UK with zero leverage. If France were to withdraw its police forces from the northern beaches in response to unilateral British actions, the number of departure attempts could surge dramatically, creating an even greater humanitarian and security crisis in the middle of the Channel. Take a breath, stay informed, and consider how quickly the political landscape can shift when international law, domestic public opinion, and raw electoral strategy collide. The political calculus surrounding border control is no longer just about practical policy execution. It has become the central battleground for the future direction of British politics. Strategic commentators note that hyper-visible, uncompromising proposals serve a dual purpose. On one level, they respond to genuine public anxiety regarding border security, local infrastructure strain, and the sheer unpredictability of unrecorded arrivals. On another level, they act as a potent political sledgehammer designed to rally voters who feel that traditional political institutions have dragged their feet for far too long. Yet, as the debate grows louder, the operational questions remain stubbornly unanswered. What happens when a fragile vessel founders in international waters? What is the protocol if foreign coastguards refuse to allow escort ships to dock? And how does a nation balance its legal obligations under maritime law with the mandate of national border enforcement? These are not hypothetical scenarios. They represent the precise dilemmas that coastguards, naval officers, and border officials confront every single hour along the southern coast of Britain. If you appreciate this level of detailed, objective analysis that cuts through the noise and presents every angle of the political chessboard, please hit the subscribe button right now. Joining the Britain Underneath community helps us continue delivering high-standard, independent journalism, and it ensures that you are always equipped with the facts that matter.